everyone and happy April. Seeing as we're in a new month, it's time to do the monthly wrap up from the previous month, which was March. So in March I read a total of 7 books. Quite a successful reading month again. I'm very happy with 7 books. That's more than one a week. I figured I would go through the books I read in March like I did in February by the amount of stars I gave the book. So we start from the least amount of stars to the most amount of stars. So the book I read in March that I gave the lowest rating was Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. In this book we meet Percy, who at the time that we meet her at the start, she is 30 years old. From the age of 13 to the age of 18, Percy would spend every single summer at this lake house that her parents bought when she was 13, and next to their lake house lived Sam Florrick and his brother. Sam and Percy form a friendship. Every summer they just get closer and closer and they become best friends, and after a while something a bit more. When Percy's 18, something happens and she never returns to Barris Bay where the lake house was until over a decade later, when she gets a call from Sam's brother saying that their mother has passed away. And so she returns for a weekend to Barris Bay, and when Percy comes back to Barris Bay and meets Sam again, she still feels the connection that she had with him from all the summers ago. The story is told over 6 summers and 1 weekend, jumps between the weekend when she's back in Barris Bay and the 6 summers that she spent by the lakeside when she was younger as well. Now I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. I will say a major reason as to why I didn't give it a higher rating was because of the ending. I think because what you had throughout the book was like these 6 summers where the relationship between Sam and Percy developed quite slowly. They obviously had a really important relationship before this break for whatever reason that you'll get to know in the end of the book. I think the fact that you then only have 1 weekend for them to kind of make up their mind about like their future, it feels a bit rushed almost. I don't know how to feel about the big reveal of what Percy did and why everything between Sam and Percy fell apart. I understand that there were things that both of the people did that was the reason as to why it fell apart. But I'm not sure if I would forgive Percy for what she did. But that's just me personally. I can understand why what happened in the end happens based on previous experiences that the characters have had. I'm trying to say these things without spoiling too much. There's this one part which is towards the end of the book which I quite liked, which makes me understand the characters a bit more and why they decided to do what happened in the end. I need to remove some words for spoiler reasons, but Sam says this: "You didn't deserve it, Percy, just like I didn't deserve what happened. Betrayals don't cancel each other out, they just hurt more." And I quite like that. And the author also put at the back, "I wanted to write about people who screw up but who ultimately try their best to do better. The characters in this book are all flawed. I hope that makes them all the more compelling. I'm personally drawn to protagonists like Percy and Sam who grapple with their own shortcomings, who face obstacles, both external and internal." And then she actually wrote, "For some readers, Percy's betrayal will be unforgivable." You get to the end and then there is an epilogue. And whilst I enjoy the epilogue, it felt a bit too rushed. The betrayal that happens on both parts, to me, Percy's betrayal is a lot worse. The epilogue kind of reasons with how Sam deals with Percy's betrayal and how they deal with it together. With like the big reveal, the ending just felt a bit rushed, because you've written this book and like 250 pages have been like, oh, what actually happened? And then you get to the big reveal and then you have like 20 pages or so to like sort it out at the end. And to me that's a bit rushed. I would recommend the book. I would love to hear other people's opinion on Percy's betrayal especially and what you thought about it. Would you forgive her? I want to know. Now I read 2 books in March that I rated 4 stars and they were both actually arcs that I got from NetGalley. First one was The Matchmaker by Catherine Walsh, who is an Irish author and she writes romance books, and I've quite enjoyed her previous books. This one was no different to her other books in kind of, you get the same overall feeling from them. In The Matchmaker we meet Katie Collins, who lives in a small village in Ireland, and she's basically been there her whole life because her family's there, her friends are there. She works in the only pub in her village and she loves the place, it's peaceful. And then Callum turns up, who's a property developer, and he's working on building a hotel just outside the city. But then after a while, Katie figures out that they want to tear down her pub. Well, it's not her pub, but the pub that she works at, to better the view for a golf course from the hotel. Now, Katie's obviously not very happy about this because the pub is her last link to her parents who met at the pub and also part of her home. And so she decides to put on this matchmaking festival to show everyone how magical the town is and try to stop them from tearing down the pub. Along the way, she gets to know Callum a bit more and a lot of other things happen. And it's overall just a really cute book. It's not something like spectacular, like I haven't read this book before, but it's really cute and thoroughly enjoyable, which is why I gave it 4 stars. Now, the other 4-star book that I read in March was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I hope that's how I pronounce her surname. If not, I apologise. In Yours Truly, we meet Brianna, who is a doctor at a hospital, and her life is not going as she wanted it to. She's finalising her divorce, her brother's in need of a kidney donor, and the promotion she wants is potentially going to a new doctor who's just started at her hospital, who's named Jacob. Now, the book is essentially about very terrible first impressions, and some good second chances, some fake dating, and also just a really cute love story. I really enjoyed reading about Jacob and Brianna's story. Yours Truly was a really cute book. Romance wise, it was really good, but also I think about the topics of like the kidney donation. Jacob is a really good character as well, I thought, and with everything he struggles with. And I think it's a really good book about how you shouldn't judge people just on the first impression that you have of them, which I quite enjoyed. There was one book that I rated 4.5 stars in March, and that was Daisy Hates The Great Undoing. If you've been around and watched my other videos recently, or just over the past couple of months, you would have seen that I've been reading the Magnolia Parks universe. It's definitely been a roller coaster for me, but being on the other end of the 4 books that have been published right now, so far in the series, I can safely say that the characters are growing on me. Daisy Hates The Great Undoing is by far the best book in the series so far. I had such a great time reading it. I was emotionally a wreck at the end, and the book left me in an awful state. After finishing Daisy Hates, I didn't even know what to do with myself because I wanted to read, but I didn't know what to pick up because I was always just constantly thinking about Daisy Hates. The storyline of Daisy Hates The Great Undoing parallels the storyline of Magnolia Parks to The Long Way Home, and so a lot of the things that happen in Magnolia Parks 2 you do get to see again in Daisy Hates 2. So there is that part with the series that there is a lot of repetitiveness, although you're getting the same scenes but from a different perspective because you're reading it from a different person's point of view. All the quotes from this book, I kid you not, I was annotating that book and I was underlining almost every single sentence in the book because I was like, oh my god, this is so good, this is so good. And I was like, the whole book is almost underlined. I don't understand how, but it was, and that's just what happened. I couldn't put that book down. Coming from someone who read Magnolia Parks and I was like, what did I just read? I was not a fan of Magnolia Parks 1. I enjoyed Magnolia Parks 2 because it explained a lot about the characters, and that's actually what happened in Daisy Hates 2 as well, because you got a lot of background information about all the 3 characters, which are Daisy Hates, Kristen Hems, and Julian Hates, who's Daisy's brother. Getting a lot of information from them about their background and stuff and their past experiences explain their characters so much more, which definitely helped you understand actions that they had in the first book as well. Daisy Hates and Kristen are by far my favorite couple in like the whole universe. Also, Julian Hates needs like an Oscar. You can't give Oscars to book characters for how they act, but I don't know how to tell you how much I enjoyed that book. It was honestly just so good. The end was gut-wrenching, and I'm very scared for the next couple of books. I know that the next book that will come out in the universe is the Magnolia Parks book. I just love the Daisy Hates characters so much more than the Magnolia Parks characters. I will say the Magnolia Parks universe is worth reading if you want to get yourself into the whole universe and if you've been thinking about it. I also read 3 5-star books, which I didn't think I would before I started the month. One of the 5-star reads that I read in March was a reread, and that was Daisy Jones and the Six, which you would have seen if you saw my Glasgow Diaries episode 4, which I will link up here. I just love Daisy Jones. As I said in my vlog, I read the book because I wanted a fresh reminder of everything that happened before I started the TV show, and I'm very glad that I did decide to reread the book. There were a lot of things that I had forgotten, and so when I started the TV show I could go in with a fresh mind, knowing what the book was and knowing what the TV show was. So in my head now, they're 2 different entities, which I'm really happy about. Honestly, the TV show was such a great adaptation. If you haven't read Daisy Jones and Six, please do. It's amazing. I'm not going to go into further details because I feel like every single person on this planet has heard of Daisy Jones and Six. If not the book, the TV show now. Another 5-star read in March was Last Violent Call by Chloe Gong. This is 2 novellas in one, and it basically ties together the Secrets of Shanghai series. These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends, which is one duology, which is Romeo and Juliet retelling, and then you have Foul Lady Fortune and Foul Heart Huntsman, which is a sequel that's coming out later on this year. 2 novellas kind of ties everything together for you to understand what's going on in Foul Heart Huntsman. Or we will understand what's going on, which I'm very excited about. And it was honestly just so cute. I'm not going to say anything because it's kind of spoilery for what happens in the first duology, so I'm not going to say anything, but it was overall just very cute. I love-hearted that whole book, to say the least, and it was amazing. I loved it. Now, the final book that I rated 5 stars and the final book that I've read in March was Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. I was reading this book in the Glasgow Diaries episode 4 as well, so I will link that one up here again if you want to watch it. Before I Let Go is a heartbreaking, gut-wrenching novel, but it is so brilliant at the same time. We meet Jasmine and Josiah, who loved one another so deeply, but love couldn't save their marriage. After their lives fell apart, they are now finally getting back on their feet again. They are divorced and they are dealing with co-parenting their 2 kids, as well as they are running a restaurant together. They're kind of like 2 magnets that will always find their way back to one another, and as things escalate and they move towards one another again, they're kind of having to deal with this whole thing of, can they let go of everything that they once had? Would they be better the second time around? I think this book is a beautiful work of art, to be honest. I'm trying not to get emotional but it's such a beautiful and heartbreaking story, as I've already said. It's dealing with a lot of difficult topics, so do read the trigger warnings before you do jump into this book. I think the way that Kennedy Ryan portrays pain, heartbreak and loss is so beautiful and also painful at the same time. You get to really see how difficult a lifelong relationship is. As someone who's just 23, I haven't experienced the great love of my life or whatever yet. As someone who's not experienced that yet, I think it's a really good story that portrays how there's so many ups and downs in a relationship. There's so many unexpected things that will happen, and at some points love might not be enough, but at the end of the day there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You will get through whatever you're going through. I think there's such a beautiful message behind the book, and for that, and for the beautiful words in the book, and just the story, I think when I finished it I didn't even need to think. I just immediately gave it 5 stars because it was a 5-star read for me, and it was just amazing, and I would highly recommend. But as I said, do look up trigger warnings because it is dealing with a lot of heavy topics that are difficult to read. I even had to take breaks whilst I was reading it because I needed a break to cry over it. But so brilliant. That was all the books that I read in March. 7 books in total. I'm very happy with it. I hope all of you also had a great reading month in March. Please do let me know if you found a new favourite book this past month, if you have any book recommendations, and hopefully April will also be a great reading month for you all. Until next time, happy reading.